So, Bill,
morning.
here we are again.
Oh, again, yes. This is our second podcast today, with one more to go, and it's. I'm really pleased that we're back on board after our long break since last December, and we've got a number of exciting people to interview, and not only that, we're still getting great feedback from people who listen to our podcast.
And that I went to a function yesterday with Becky, and one of the attendees there was talking about business and exposing business, and then turned to me, and I was really surprised, and they said, "Oh, and then Mark Edmonds and Bill Winter do these podcasts supporting businesses in Geelong, and it's fantastic." I went, "Oh," and I totally unexpected, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, the other thing, Mark, and I know, Lisa, your business has podcasts. In fact, I've listened to a couple of them. But what we never realised when we started was how much time this would take. And I sat down last night and did an equation, and I took the two of us by the number of hours that we've spent doing podcast preparation, recording, and all the rest of it afterwards. It comes to $54,000 worth of time. Right?
Yeah,
that's
well,
frightening.
That is, but it's fun. I enjoy doing it.
Well, that's right. The only problem is you and I both live with people who keep saying to us, "Are you making any money out of this?" Right? And I keep saying, it's not about the money.
It's not about the money. That's exactly right. Right. So today, Bill, I'm sitting opposite Lisa Sweeney, the CEO of Business in Heels. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks, Mark.
And Lisa and I go way back to Target days when Lisa was, I would say, one of the best ladies' wear buyers that I came across in my existence at Target. Very passionate and very focused on giving good results. So I'm not surprised Lisa is where she is today, but welcome. And Lisa, let's start with, where did you go to primary school?
Thanks, Mark. You're very kind about ladies' wear, but where did I start at primary school? I started my schooling at Finton Girls' School in a lovely brown uniform.
Wow.
And to today, I still can't wear brown.
And
Lisa, I know that uniform well. I think the girls are on the same tram I used to be on, go to school in Kew.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then from primary school, what was your journey?
So same high school. It was one of those little schools. So my mother had this plan that I would not be lost in the numbers. So it was one of those schools where you could try a bit of everything. And I guess in some ways it gave me the confidence to think I could do whatever I could do, which was the purpose of the school as opposed to being lost in big numbers. But, I wasn't particularly great at anything in particular. It was one of those things. And so from school, I then went, it was all-girls school. I was very excited to get out of an all-girls school and went to university and started doing agriculture. So,
oh wow! And what was the drive to that?
Originally, I thought I would do vet science. So I was very hung up around animals, and we grew up with having a property down in the Bellarine, so had horses down there, and I was constantly, backwards and forwards riding, and, so my ideal was to become a vet until I probably discovered the reality of it. So I went and did some work experience, and we spent a week putting down all sorts of dogs, which was very, very sad. So my idea of rescuing and saving animals wasn't really exactly the reality of what a vet does. But I did end up doing agriculture, which is really very much a general science course, but then it branches into all sorts of exciting things like economics.
And was that at Deakin?
No, this is at Melbourne University.
Okay.
And excitingly, we spent a year on off campus on a farm, and we had to do work experience out there and, go into the piggery and deal with pigs and chooks and, all sorts of different things. And I found it really interesting, but most of the jobs coming out of that were in extension, which was government at that stage, and talking to farmers and telling them why their business model would no longer be viable and how they'd have to give up the family farm, which you can imagine in your 20s would be, something virtually impossible to do, as a female.
And a crusty old farmer.
Exactly. And, can you imagine giving people that sort of news? So I realised quickly that probably wasn't for me.
So where did you
Lisa, Mark, things haven't changed. they look at me, and I've got different colour hair, silver hair, and you talk to an old-time farmer, and they just don't know how to listen. And, of course, what happens then is that the second generation or the next generation gets frustrated. And that's when conflict occurs, which you prompted another question. In your business and heels, do you have any women in agriculture in your,
Yeah, we do.
events?
We do, in amongst the mix. So we connect 200,000, so you can imagine it's a pretty broad base of people. And we do have people that have come through as first and second generation. But I think probably the trend you would have seen over time with agriculture is the need to amalgamate. That's such a, it's a hard business to run unless you are doing it on a reasonable scale. And so that's been, obviously the trick. So some of the women that we've got involved do some very interesting businesses.
It's interesting, Bill, because some of the folk that you speak to, it's the second or third generation that have headed off the farm and aren't going back.
That's right. Yeah, and that's what Lisa related to, is that amalgamation, consolidation of farms in particular has become the norm for the future, because it all comes down to economics and productivity and synergy and all those key words. And particularly in crops, the bigger the better.
Yeah, it's big business, and if you're going to make take the benefit of the data-driven stuff that you can do today, you can have electric fences that are now run by satellite and that move and take the cattle around without a need for investing in fences, or without the need for cattle mustering with helicopters and things. So, yeah, exciting, different world.
Yeah.
So sorry, go on, Bill.
Going back a bit, when we go back to your study days and listen, what were your interests outside of the education you were pursuing in those days?
Well, clearly, unlike many of the women I come across today, it was more around partying and fashion. So I feel, in hindsight, that I could have invested my time more wisely. However, it did lead me where I ended up. So
could have, should have, would have?
Something like that.
Yeah. First job?
So first job out of uni, I ended up going into retail in restaurants. So I was employed by PepsiCo as a store management. So I had my first crash course in running restaurants. So at 21, I probably ended up with a team of like 100 employees that were reporting to me, which is pretty amazing, and a liquor license and all sorts of interesting things. So it was an incredible challenge. And so I worked in maybe 3 or 4 different restaurants. The biggest one was out at Mount Waverley, so it's just opposite Monash University, and it was absolutely full of the uni crowd and many people coming over from the local hotel. And I was the first port of call to actually kick people out that were too drunk that we couldn't have in the restaurant. So interesting times.
So good customer service education.
Absolutely.
Was that the Notting Hill Hotel?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I might have been thrown out of there a couple of times.
That's not a good story, Bill. But anyway, so
student days, right?
Yeah, student days. So that's interesting, because agriculture, step out of uni and into hospitality.
Yep.
So what's going through your head at the time? Had you got a vision where you wanted to end up, or?
Not precisely, but I did know that. So economically, so from my economics, which is something I really enjoyed, I was thinking, well, I'd get into management and business and let's sort of see where that went. So restaurants was the start, but then I didn't love the restaurant hours. Yep. But, I had a lot of fun, so you can take the party theme along, and so a lot of the staff would come back after work, and we would, and I was very good at building team culture. And so after I decided that restaurants weren't great, I then decided that maybe it was retail. And at this stage, there was no late night trading. And so I offered myself to a number of different retail organisations, said whoever wants to move me out of Melbourne, because I decided I'd like to have the country lifestyle. So I'm not going to be in agriculture, but I like the country lifestyle, would have my loyalty. And so Target took me on, and Peter Eldred, who at that stage was head of stores, took me on, and I moved to Bendigo, which is where I started my retail career in Target, which then led me on to many different things. And so initially I started in the paint and auto section. I have no idea why. And I had to learn which batteries we would put into which cars and how to mix paint and whatnot. And after not too long, but you do have to appreciate the times. So I was told I had to wear high heels on the floor and stockings, otherwise that wasn't okay. And after not too long a time, I was moved into the ladies' wear side because obviously I did have a flair for fashion, and then I was able to help them create some interesting displays.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when Bill asked you what were your interests outside, you did say fashion. So it's interesting how an interest can become the career.
Yeah,
as it evolves, isn't it? It's quite fascinating.
Mark, it's in the DNA, isn't it?
Yes,
really.
In fact, that's a very good point.
Moving forward, having been through what was Target Spotlight, Best and List, I read, and the whole gamut of retail, which today is totally different, as we all know. But we talk about our tipping points and sliding doors. So, what tipped you out of retail?
Well, maybe just to go back into retail for a minute, because I can probably set the scene here a little bit better. So after going into stores, I then got into the buying office, which I found was really where I had the most fun. It was my ability to be creative and to pull together all sorts of things. So I got into buying, which for women is amazing because somebody else's credit card and you're constantly having to spend money, right? So I found myself actually in China in the early 1990s, which back then China was lucky to have discovered Nescafe, and we were out in a factory and I was buying print leggings at the time, which was kind of like the hottest thing since sliced bread. And the more ugly the print, the better it sold. And I was out in trying to get more prints into store quickly, and I was out in the factories and I had to be there for a day or so. And we were having a long discussion over lunch. It was the first time I'd actually come across the one-child policy, and it was something I was not aware of, and it never occurred to me up until then that people were actively making choices about life and things on the basis of gender. And so for the people in China, their whole life retirement policy is based around their child. And so they were then choosing actively to have a boy child because they felt economically they would get a better return on their investment for the future, and they were abandoning girl children on the street. And as I said, it had never occurred to me, and I found it quite horrifying. And it made me think a little bit more about gender equality. And in the 90s in retail, it wasn't great. And so when I came back, I became a lot more aware of just how hard the leaders above me that were female had to strive to be successful and were continuing to strive to be successful. So you need to consider that had then become a bit of a driving factor in the course of my career across various different industries. And I went on later to actually adopt my daughter from China. So there's a number of things. So when I finally got to the point of retail. So I was in toys, running big sections of toys and leisure. And so it's all about the toy sale, the next plastic toy, and the next potential thing for landfill. And I was feeling that there wasn't a lot of purpose behind what I was doing, that it was probably time to leave and take up something new. And that's when I left and started thinking about what could I do. So I think in some ways you think Business in Heels, which is all about empowering women in business and professional women, there's some purpose there to try and help women today perform better, to work on the whole, gender equality piece. There's a lot more purpose in it, but you can understand that if you understand that story.
And it's interesting, Bill, because having worked with Lisa at Target, Lisa was always very strong about how she went about delivering what she needed to deliver, because it was a pretty male-dominated organisation at the time. And it's funny when you think back with hindsight, the degree of sexism that existed that was just happening, was just sort of accepted, was terrible in some respects.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, I was running Hot Options at one stage, which was the young women's fashion. And so constantly trying to explain to senior leaders that were men. And I can remember one great question was, what is making the leggings stay down, right? And so I thought it was a joke. I'm looking at the wall, not realising that this is the managing director, was deadly serious. And I turned around to have a joke and realised that he was deadly serious. And it's like, well, you have seen the shape of women's legs, you notice that they're a little slimmer down around the ankles.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because we digress slightly here, but I remember there was a certain leader of the organisation, I'll be careful how I tiptoe around this, and they decided to lay out the stores in ladies' wear, where this is where your daughter will shop, this is where your wife will shop, and this is where your mother will shop. Because in their head, it was about age, not about how you as the person feel. And people were going, no. There are women of 60 that wanting to go to the young women's area because that's what they feel comfortable with. Why would you say they have to shop? Awful, Bill. Awful stuff. But anyway, it's history now.
Well, unfortunately, that's, in a lot of industries, or it was. And in my own experience, I see it changing rapidly. I think, from Lisa's point of view, probably it's not happening fast enough. But it's... One thing I want to get on to, Lisa, was in your organisation, you've got a lot of women in business in it, and particularly in small business. What do you think the key issues, not only being a female in business, but just for small business owners right now? Because we're starting to see a lot of heartache out there for small business owners. And we interviewed a young lady for one of our early podcasts, and her business didn't survive, I guess, the aftermath of COVID, and it is tough. You got any thoughts on women wanting to start a small business?
Absolutely. Look, just to clarify too, Business in Heels is probably quite a good balance between women who run businesses and women who are professionals, and we actually see a zigzag journey. It's an interesting thing. So it's a bit like the age factor we were discussing before. Most women's careers aren't linear, and so a lot of women will start in corporate, then they'll set up a business, and then they'll go back to corporate when their kids go to school and often start another business again. So we do see women. So why do women start businesses? A lot of it is with a desire for flexibility. And so the challenges many of them have, which plague them through their whole career, one is lack of confidence. So they start a business, but they're not really confident about it. Most of them are quite money averse. So the chances is there's 35% less women who will borrow money than men. And this makes a significant impact, as you know, with getting your business kicked off. And the other part, which comes back to a lot of the confidence or, so I don't have a lot of money, so I feel I should do everything. And they are very inefficient at recognising what they're good at and investing their time in a whole lot of unproductive things that they're not good at. And so today the opportunities really around all this new AI productivity and digital innovation that we're seeing, and we actually just ran a very cool event for Digital Innovation Summit for Geelong yesterday, and we were talking about this. But something like Calendly, for example, you think how long you spend just making, an appointment with somebody in the email trail. It saves me at least 5 hours a week. And we were talking about some of the productivity savings that you can get, from ChatGPT. Most people are playing with that now. And we're talking about Gemini and other things. So there's a whole lot of functions that business owners are doing in their business, and it could be anything from accounting to just reading their emails, that could be done much more productively. And so at the moment, with inflation pressures, lack of investment, lack of sales, rising costs, people have to do more with less. And so they've got to be smarter, not harder. And this is kind of the key opportunity I think we need to get through to women, so then they can spend the time that they want to spend with their families and not try and work, 60, 80-hour weeks.
True.
Yeah, Mark and I are judges on the Geelong Business Awards, And over the 4 odd years I've been doing that, I would say the majority of entrants are females, and we see some amazing women in business. Now, but nobody ever really hears of them or anything like that. But I guess for every amazing one, there are half a dozen out there who fit the category of going through the issues you just spoke about.
Absolutely. And so think about how many businesses, small businesses there are in Australia or even in this region. I mean, we're talking
21,000 in Geelong region.
Exactly. And so a lot of them are micro and they never, get over the line. And so I guess it's that confidence piece too, and just getting people out the door. And yesterday we had quite a few people who'd never been to a networking event before.
That's interesting, isn't it? So just flipping back slightly. So time's up at Target, you leave. What did you do next?
So I took some time to reflect, to be honest, and I think this is really important. After coming out of corporate, there's a lot of identity caught up with titles and ego and all the rest of it, and trying to decide what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And so a lot of people that I've connected with and still remain connected with are from that time, and today we run a leadership summit for women in retail, and we still connect with and talk to a lot of the senior leaders right across the retail industry. I used to run licensing for Target, and again I still connect with and talk to a lot of people from that business. What I'm now done, and that this was the interesting piece because I didn't love networking, is I've now created network which connects with people across finance, insurance and super, and across cyber technology and telco. So gradually expanding my industries in reach and connectivity. And so it's very, which is great. So I can tap into all sorts of interesting people, and they tell me, what the state of the market is and what they're working on and where things are going to next.
So how did you get to Business in Heels?
So how did I get to Business in Heels? So after a lot of soul searching, myself and a really great friend, and I believe you've already had her on, Jo Plummer. Yep. So Jo and I started Target together day one. So you have to appreciate we have a lot of history. We're not going to count how many years that is, but a lot of history. And so we both were looking for something that we thought had a bit more purpose in it, and we both loved the idea of supporting women to be better. And so Business in Heels was born around empowering women in business, both professional women and business owners. And so today we've got 4 pillars: mentoring, education, connection and marketing. And we do connect 200,000, and we do have branches in Malaysia and UAE, and we're just setting up in Europe. So it continues to expand. So Jo was with me for the first few years, but not long thereafter she got a really cool chair board role. And that kicked off her board portfolio career, and slowly she then withdrew from the business. So she's fully out of it today, but exciting stuff.
So Business in Heels has 3 different businesses?
Yeah, so there's 3 different parts to it. So initially it was all around empowering women in business, which we still do a lot of. We then added the Gender Equity Awards, and a big part, so at International Women's Day, we got very frustrated. It's one of those things where, lots of women get together, and you'll see it over the next week or two. And everybody has great talk fest. We all agree wholeheartedly, and nothing happens. And so the idea was, couldn't we, if everybody knew what the best things were that were happening, wouldn't it just make life easier, and people could easily adopt things rather than starting everything from scratch and then improve on it, right? And the marketplace would kick on a little bit faster. So that's the premise behind the Gender Equity Awards, and we've been running them now for 2 years, and we're really starting to see, so the winners are getting candidates coming to them because of that award that they've won, and actively seeking them out as an employer of choice. And we're seeing other employers across the marketplace coming to those people going, how did you implement that? That's really interesting. We want to roll something out. And so, one of the winners, Yasket, actually has the first paid menstruation and menopause leave, which, is something that most people don't even talk about. So that's very cool that they've got that rolled out. So that's one part of the business. But then we realised that there's a whole lot of employers that actually want a bit of help with this, and because we're in a unique position with understanding a lot of the best practice, we introduced business in mentoring, which is all about actually supporting companies, both men and women, to do better. So we do things from unconscious bias training to a whole lot around the psychosocial hazards. So we're doing one really cool training course which is around dexterous dialogues, which is all about helping senior leaders have tough conversations, which today, communication's everything, and if you could have that. So we let them actually have the worst conversations and practice in a safe environment with actors so they can really get some muscle behind and emotional content of delivering that stuff.
Wow, broad church of product.
Yeah.
Mark, I just want to change tack for a minute, Lisa, if you don't mind. I want to talk about Geelong and about what, if I made you the mayor of Geelong and gave you the magic wand, what do you think you could do to promote small business operators, not just necessarily female, all genders, to help Geelong move forward? Because at the moment I have some concerns that there's too many talk fests going on and there's not enough action. What would you do to push the agenda along to get business, I guess, in a much stronger position? Because the next turnaround is going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
It's interesting. I think the biggest opportunity is the digital innovation. So people need to think about how they can make their marketplace be beyond their location. So if Geelong itself is not working today, like how can they actually take a piece of the pie globally? And so what we need, and it could happen in any business. So the assumption that because I run a local restaurant or a pub or whatever, that I can't play digitally is wrong. And so what we need to do is get people thinking about, so what is it? What's the intrinsic products and things that I can offer, or experiences that then can play on a global stage? And then suddenly you're not limited by what's happening in one location versus another, and it allows people to actually grow their spend, the income. So I think that, and we were working on this plan for Portland actually, which is a local town that's really limited, and so a lot of tourism operators, just think of a booking for their table. They don't actually think, well, if I've got this unique dish, perhaps I can sell the recipe, or perhaps I can sell the ingredients to the recipe, or perhaps I can sell both the ingredients and the recipe and somebody can then make it at home. What are all the little extra things that you can add on? We saw people being really creative through COVID, and now that we've got, at the moment, inflation, I just saw some of the Roy Morgan data the other day, and it was saying that the biggest cutbacks have been actually into the hospitality spend. So it's the local bars, it's the local cafes. And so, can I, if I'm the local coffee shop, can I roast my own beans? Can I sell the beans? And then can I let people do that online and buy it from me anywhere?
Actually, it's the 18th Amendment bar does a lot of that. Very interesting how they've invented.
Now, Mark, that brings us back to what we're doing with Nathan George at Pixel, is that we're talking to Nathan about rebuilding our Barwon Southwest Mentor website, because we realise that we've got to move into that next phase of using AI and whatever else it might be, or whatever comes along next, and we're lagging behind. That's just the two of us thinking about it.
Yep. So, Lisa?
Sorry, just on that, that's one of the things we started doing for some of our women, because a lot of them didn't have web presences. So we've actually set up a buy now, pay later thing for them, which actually is website, CRM. It's the whole ecosystem. Because I think, again, today, one of the challenges has been, well, how do you navigate this very complicated marketplace? And potentially people get sucked in around web versus SEO versus CRM, and what do I do?
And in fact, if I had $1 for every person that said to me, I've got a friend who's got a son who makes websites, therein lies a huge problem.
Exactly.
Lisa, just very quickly, digital innovation you did yesterday. Talk a little bit about that. What was it about? Who was there?
Yeah, it's an exciting event. So we're delivering it in partnership with NBN, of course, who are the infrastructure provider of Australia. And we brought in Accenture as well. We're bringing different partners in different regions. We're actually delivering this around Australia. But it's a great opportunity for local people to actually hear what all the trends are and what's happening. We spent quite a bit of time on cybersecurity and a fascinating story about a company that recently got gouged for $25 million. So they had some ransomware, and they thought that the CFO thought he was having a video call with his CEO, and through the dark web and all the rest of it, the CEO was actually a scam, and he told him to pay the ransomware, and he did, and that just disappeared.
Amazing.
So, but that was really interesting. And then we had some amazing local people who you would know, Arthur Street Digital, Enterprise Monkey and Harvest Recruitment, talking about a lot of the useful apps and things that people can use and how to use them, some of the great digital innovation that's happening already within Geelong. And I think Enterprise Monkey were talking about some of the great work that they're doing with health providers, because there's a lot of regulation in there around how data is handled. And Harvest Recruitment talking a lot about how you can upskill digitally. So at the moment, I think Australia's got a problem where 300,000 people short of people who are considered to be digitally enabled, and that just really means being able to work around a computer. And we're short about 120,000 experts, which are real IT operators that we need to run and take us to the next level. So it's actually, opportunity for lots of people.
That's good stuff. Actually, yesterday, I slightly digress. I happened to flick on, as I was leaving home, the Channel 7 program, and they had a guy on there that was showing how the two compares and their voices had been manipulated by AI, and they played them back to each other. And if you copped the phone call that said, "Hi, it's your son or daughter, Mum, can you send me money? The phone number I'm using, I've had to borrow a phone." The number of people that have been caught by that is unbelievable. So scary world out there.
Yeah, I think the message is don't click on any link and don't send money.
Don't send money. Lisa, how do people get in contact with Business in Heels?
So we've got websites, www.businessinheels.com. And so, if people have a look at it, the website's set up so that you've got a different experience if you're a business owner to an employee. We have a lot of leadership things. We also run mentoring in a number of different locations, and it's mentor mornings are there for any woman to access mentoring cheaply, so it's like $20 to come along. So Geelong runs it, and it's supported by leaders from within the community, but we also run it in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and we do an online session for those that can't come in.
And LinkedIn as well?
Absolutely.
Easy to find you on LinkedIn?
Yep.
Excellent. So Bill, any final questions?
No, in fact, while I was waiting for this, I was watching a podcast off your website, just to make myself aware of what you're offering, which is all great stuff. And I don't think I have to wish you success. It looks like it's doing very well, but I just hope you can find the means to keep it going, and it can only get bigger and better in my eyes. And it's a much needed resource. There's no doubt about that.
Well, thanks, Bill. And we're excited because we're just about to kick off the Gender Equity Awards for 2024. So for any of you that are listening that think you're doing something clever around gender equity, or you're an individual, we'd love to get people to enter because we want to understand what best practice is.
Fantastic. Lisa, thank you very much for your time, and good luck for the future.